There is a moment that happens inside an avoidant person's brain, and almost nobody ever sees it coming. It happens right before they get hooked on someone. It is not a moment of romance. It is not a moment of chemistry. It is a moment of silence. And once you understand what causes that silence to switch from a wall into an open door, you will understand something about human connection that most people never figure out in their entire lives. Here is the claim I want you to sit with for a second, because it sounds backwards at first. The people an avoidant becomes obsessed with are almost never the ones who love them the hardest. They are the ones who make the least noise. That single fact explains almost every confusing, maddening, contradictory thing an avoidant person has ever done to you. Let's start with the machine underneath the behavior, because if you don't understand the machine, nothing else in this video is going to make sense. An avoidant nervous system is not lazy and it is not cold. It is a smoke detector that was built years ago in a house that used to catch fire a lot. Maybe it was a parent who was inconsistent. Maybe it was a home where love came with strings, or with volume, or with unpredictable explosions. So the smoke detector got sensitive, extremely sensitive. So sensitive that now, as an adult, it doesn't just go off when there's an actual fire. It goes off when someone lights a candle in the next room. That's the part people miss. When you show up with warmth, with questions, with a desire to get close, you are lighting a candle. To you, it's cozy. To their nervous system, it is indistinguishable from a five-alarm fire. The detector screams. And the only tool they've ever been given to make that screaming stop is distance, so they pull back. Not because they don't like the warmth, because the alarm doesn't know the difference between warmth and danger yet. Think about what a smoke detector does when someone waves a towel at it to try to make it stop. It doesn't quiet down. It shrieks louder, because in its programming, more motion near it means more danger, not less. That's exactly what's happening biologically when someone chases an avoidant person harder in response to their silence. The chasing isn't received as love. It's received as confirmation that the threat is real and getting closer. Now here's your first rehook, because this is where it gets interesting. If distance is their only tool for safety, then chasing them is the single most counterproductive thing a human being can do. And yet almost everyone does it. They text again, they ask, "Are we okay?" They demand an explanation for the silence. Every one of those moves is like walking toward a smoke detector and waving your hands in front of it, wondering why it's getting louder. So what actually breaks the pattern? Let me tell you about somebody I'll call Daniel, because his story is the cleanest example of this I've ever seen play out. Daniel had been in 3 relationships by the time he turned 30, and all 3 ended the exact same way. He would get close to someone, feel a wave of pressure building, and disappear for a few days. Every single partner responded the same way too. Panic. Texts stacking up. "Did I do something wrong? Please just talk to me. I thought we had something real." And every single time, Daniel felt the walls close in tighter, and he'd end the relationship completely rather than face what felt, to his nervous system, like an ambush. Then he met a woman named Priya, and the first time he went quiet on her, for 4 days, something strange happened. Nothing. She didn't text. She didn't ask if they were okay. On day 5, she sent him a photo of a dog she'd seen wearing a raincoat, with a caption that just said, "This dog thought he was going to work." No mention of the silence. No test hidden inside the message. Daniel told a friend later that he stared at that text for 10 minutes because he didn't know what to do with a person who wasn't demanding anything from him. That's the exception moment. That's what creates the addiction, not romance, relief. Daniel told that same friend months later that the raincoat dog picture was the moment something shifted for him, though he couldn't fully explain why at the time. He said every other person he'd dated made him feel like there was homework waiting whenever his phone lit up. With Priya, his phone lighting up started to feel like nothing at all, in the best possible sense. Nothing to solve, nothing to defend, just a person, existing, occasionally sending him something small and easy. He started answering faster, not because she asked him to, because answering finally felt like the lightest part of his day instead of the heaviest. That's the whole mechanism in miniature. Relief doesn't announce itself loudly. It just quietly makes someone's presence feel like the opposite of pressure. And once a person experiences that even once, they start to orient their whole nervous system around getting more of it, the same way your body craves water after you've finally stopped feeling thirsty. Here's the first real principle, and it's going to sound almost too simple to matter, but it changes everything. Stop talking to their feelings. Start talking to their conduct. When you ask an avoidant person, "How do you feel about us?" their brain doesn't hear curiosity. It hears an audit. It hears, "I am about to be evaluated on whether my inner world is acceptable." That question forces them to look directly at the exact thing they've spent their whole life trying not to look at. so the shutters come down immediately, and you get a shrug, or a "I don't know," or silence, and you walk away thinking they don't care. But watch what happens when you shift the target from their emotions to their actions. Instead of asking what they feel, you notice what they did. You remembered I don't like cilantro. You texted me back faster today. You showed up early. None of those sentences require them to open a vault they're not ready to open. All of those sentences say the same underlying thing. I am paying attention to you, and I like what I'm seeing. That is a completely different nervous system experience. It doesn't trigger the alarm. It bypasses it entirely. Most people in an avoidance life have spent years pointing out what they're failing to give. You become the first person who points out what they're already getting right. And once that happens, even a handful of times, something shifts in them that they can't fully explain to themselves. They start associating you with being enough, instead of associating you with being not enough yet again. Think about a woman named Renata, who dated an avoidant man for almost a year before she figured this out. Every time he went quiet for a day, she used to ask him directly what he was feeling, and every time, he'd freeze up and give her one-word answers until the conversation died on its own. One evening, instead of asking how he felt about their relationship, she simply said, "You changed your work schedule around so you could pick me up Friday. I noticed that." He didn't say much back in the moment, but that was the week he started initiating plans without being asked, something he'd never done before. She hadn't changed him. She'd just given his nervous system a category it actually knew how to respond to. Second principle, and this one is where most people accidentally sabotage themselves without realizing it. You have to learn how to state a need without attaching a verdict to it. Avoidant people carry an old belief, usually one they can't even name out loud, that they are the reason things fall apart. So the moment you say something like, "You never open up," or "You always pull away," you're not just describing a pattern, you are confirming their deepest fear, which is that they are, at their core, a disappointment. And once that fear gets confirmed, they don't stay and try harder. They leave, because staying means being reminded of it every single day. Here's the fix, and it is genuinely one-sentence structure that changes outcomes. Instead of naming their flaw, name your own operating manual, not "You never make time for me." Instead, "I do best in relationships where I know I'll hear from you at least once a day. That's just how I function. Do you feel the difference?" One sentence puts them on trial. The other one hands them an instruction manual for how to keep you happy, with zero accusation baked into it. This matters because avoidant people are not actually allergic to meeting expectations. They are allergic to feeling like a verdict has already been reached about their character. When you remove the verdict and just leave the instructions, something remarkable happens. They can actually follow them. And following clear instructions that don't come loaded with blame feels completely different than trying to satisfy a moving target they can never quite reach. Picture two versions of the exact same conversation. In version 1, someone says, "You always cancel on me last minute. It's like I don't matter to you." That sentence hands over a verdict, and the only response left is either to grovel or to disappear, and an avoidant person will almost always pick disappear. In version 2, the same person says, "I really value plans that stay solid once we make them. That's just something I need to feel good in this." Same underlying frustration, completely different landing. The second version gives them something to actually do instead of something to defend against. And people, in general, will move toward a clear target far more often than they'll move away from a vague accusation. Now the third principle, and this is the one that trips up almost everyone, because it requires you to fight your own instincts. You have to master the art of doing nothing. I want you to picture the exact moment a message goes unanswered. Hour 1 passes, hour 3. By hour 6, most people's brains are already writing a story. Did I say something wrong? Are they done with me? Should I send a follow-up? That follow-up message feels like connection to you. To them, it lands as an invoice. It says, "Your silence has created a problem, and now you owe me a response to fix it." That is emotional labor, stacked directly onto the exact thing they were trying to get relief from in the first place. The people who eventually become impossible for an avoidant to forget are the ones who send a message and then simply live their life. Not performatively, not as a manipulation tactic where they're secretly checking their phone every 4 minutes while pretending not to care. Actually living their life, going to the gym, watching a show, calling a friend, existing, fully, without needing a reply to feel okay. Here's why that lands so hard on an avoidant nervous system. In their history, silence has always been treated like a crime scene. Somebody comes back to inspect it, demand a confession, or punish them for it. When you don't do any of that, you become the first person whose peace of mind isn't dependent on their immediate performance. And peace, to a nervous system that's never experienced it, is intoxicating. It's not that they forget about you during the silence. It's that when they finally do respond, they're not walking back into a storm. They're walking back into the same calm room they left. That consistency becomes the safest place they know. There's a reason follow-up messages feel so unbearable to them specifically, and it has nothing to do with how you phrase them. It's the math. Every additional message during a silence adds one more thing they now have to respond to before things go back to normal. 3 unanswered texts doesn't feel like 3 separate expressions of care to them. It feels like a stack of 3 overdue bills. And the longer that stack gets, the more the whole interaction starts to feel like something to avoid altogether rather than something to return to. One message and then genuine silence keeps the door light enough that walking back through it doesn't feel like effort. Let's build on that because there's a fourth principle hiding underneath all of this, and it's about weight, not words. For an avoidant person, closeness has quietly become synonymous with cost. Somewhere along the way, they learned that getting close to someone means an eventual invoice arrives, deep conversations they're not ready for, emotional debriefs, being asked to perform vulnerability on command. So even something as small as a sweet good morning text can get filed under incoming labor if it's usually followed by a heavier ask. The move here is to make contact cheap, not meaningless. Cheap, as in low cost, low stakes, no strings, a meme that made you think of them, a single line about something funny that happened, no follow-up question demanding a response, no emotional temperature check buried inside it. You're teaching their nervous system a new lesson through repetition. Contact with you does not always come with a bill attached. Once that lesson sinks in, something interesting happens to their internal math. They stop rationing themselves around you. People who feel like every interaction might cost them start hoarding their energy, staying vague, staying just out of reach. But people who learn that an interaction might just be light, might just be easy, start showing up more, not less. Not because you demanded it, because it stopped being expensive to be near you. A simple way to build this habit is what I'd call the 2-minute rule. Before you send anything to an avoidant person, ask yourself if reading it and responding to it would take them more than 2 minutes of energy. A funny video passes that test easily. We need to talk about where this is going, does not. This isn't about avoiding real conversations forever. It's about not stacking every single interaction with a hidden toll booth. The lighter your day-to-day contact stays, the more room there is for the occasional real conversation to actually land when it matters, instead of getting lost in a pile of exhausting ones. Now here's a rehook worth sitting with for a second, because it explains almost every avoidant relationship you've ever watched implode. Avoidant people are running an old script in their head about how conflict goes. Step 1, they pull back to regulate. Step 2, the other person panics and escalates. Step 3, it turns into a blow-up or an ultimatum. They have lived this script so many times that the moment they feel distance coming on, they're already bracing for step 2 and step 3 before you've even said a word. This is where you get to rewrite the script in real time. When you notice them pulling back instead of escalating, you say something like, "I'm going to give us both some space and we'll pick this up when we're ready." And then you actually do it. No slammed doors, no guilt-loaded silence sitting underneath your words. You just take the space, genuinely, and come back later without resentment baked in. Do you understand what that does to their prediction machine? They are braced for a fight that never lands. And when it doesn't land, over and over, their entire model of what closeness costs starts to crumble. You stop being filed under threat to manage. You start being filed under the one person who doesn't blow this up. That reclassification in their nervous system is the single biggest shift that occurs in the entire process of them becoming attached to you. There's one more piece to this, and it's easy to miss, because it isn't about a specific thing you say or don't say. It's about the shape of your presence over time. Avoidant people are far less rattled by consistency than they are by intensity. A relationship that runs at a steady, moderate temperature feels survivable to their nervous system. A relationship that swings from intense closeness one week to intense distance the next feels exactly like the chaos they grew up bracing for, even if both extremes come from a place of love. This is why grand romantic gestures often backfire on someone with this wiring, even when they're genuinely appreciated in the moment. A massive declaration of feelings, followed by weeks of normal, quiet contact, followed by another wave of intensity, teaches their body that closeness is unpredictable, and unpredictable is exactly what their alarm system was built to detect. What actually earns their trust is boring in the best possible way. The same warmth on a Tuesday as on a Saturday. The same tone after a great date as after an average one. When your presence stops fluctuating based on how connected they let themselves be that week, they stop needing to brace for the next swing because there isn't one coming. Steadiness, not romance, is what finally convinces their nervous system that this particular relationship is not going to catch fire. So, let's pull all 5 of these together, because none of them work in isolation, and this is the part most people skip past too fast to actually absorb. Talking to their actions instead of their feelings removes the interrogation. Stating your needs as your own operating manual removes the accusation. Mastering silence removes the invoice. Responding to distance with calm instead of panic removes the fight they were bracing for, and staying steady instead of intense removes the unpredictability their alarm was built to catch. Individually, each one chips away at a small piece of the alarm system. Together, they dismantle the entire premise the avoidant person has been operating on their whole life, which is that closeness always ends in exposure, blame, exhaustion, or war. And here is the part that explains why this creates something that looks from the outside like addiction. It is not addiction to you as a person, at least not at first. It is addiction to the feeling of the alarm finally shutting off. Imagine living your entire adult life with a smoke detector going off every single time someone gets near you, and then, for the first time, meeting one person around whom it just stops. That silence, that absence of alarm, is not something they can manufacture on their own. It only exists around you. So they keep coming back to the one place they can actually exhale. This is also why it can feel so lopsided from the outside, and why friends watching from the sidelines sometimes get confused. They'll see you being calm and patient, and the avoidant person being distant and slow to reciprocate, and assume you're the one doing all the work. What they can't see is the internal work happening on the other side. The quiet, invisible recalibration of a threat system that has to slowly relearn, contact by contact, that this particular person is not the danger it was trained to expect. That process isn't lazy, it's just silent, which makes it easy to mistake for nothing happening at all. Now I have to say something important here, because if you walk away from this video thinking these are manipulation tactics, you have missed the entire point, and you will fail at using any of it. None of this works if it's performance. If you're secretly checking your phone every 10 minutes while pretending to be unbothered, they will feel that. Nervous systems are shockingly good at detecting a performance of calm versus actual calm. These 4 principles are not a script to trick someone into wanting you. They are a description of what it looks like to actually become a secure, grounded person, and then simply let someone else experience what that's like up close. You're not managing them. You are removing your own chaos from the equation and letting them notice the difference for themselves. And this is where I need to give you the piece almost nobody says out loud in these kinds of videos, because it's inconvenient, but it's the truth. Becoming the calm, secure person in the relationship is not a permanent job description you're signing up for. It is a test, and it has to run both directions. You are allowed to hold space for someone's nervous system while it learns a new pattern. What you are not allowed to do, what you should never do, is spend years being the only regulated person in the relationship while the other person never grows an inch. If you show up consistently secure, consistently calm, consistently free of games, and over enough time they still cannot meet you, even partway, that is not a communication problem anymore. That is information. And the same grounded self-respect that made you magnetic to them in the first place is exactly what should walk you out the door if they never learn to reciprocate it. Give it real time, not a week, not a month of good behavior followed by a relapse into old habits, but a genuine, sustained stretch where you can watch whether the pattern is actually shifting. Look for small, concrete signs of growth. Are they initiating contact more than they used to? Are they staying in the room during hard conversations, instead of leaving the second things get uncomfortable? Are they catching themselves mid-pullback and naming it out loud, instead of disappearing without a word? Those are the signs of a nervous system actually rewiring itself. What you don't want to accept is a pattern where the calm you're offering gets absorbed indefinitely with nothing ever changing on their end. Safety that only flows in one direction isn't a relationship, it's a service, and you were never meant to provide it for free, forever, with no expectation of anything coming back. Because here's the truth underneath everything we've covered today. You were never actually trying to make yourself irresistible to an avoidant person. You are practicing what it looks like to be a whole, regulated human being who doesn't need someone else's immediate reaction to feel secure in yourself. And it just so happens that the exact same qualities that make you unshakable also happen to be the ones an avoidant nervous system has been quietly starving for its entire life. If they meet you there, eventually, fully, not performing it but actually growing into it, you will have built something most people never get to experience, a relationship with no alarms going off in it at all. 2 nervous systems that have finally learned they don't have to brace for each other anymore. And if they don't meet you there, you will walk away from this having lost nothing, because you will have already become the calmest, most secure version of yourself either way. Nobody can take that back from you once it's built. It doesn't belong to the relationship, it belongs to you. So the next time someone you care about goes quiet, remember this: you are not losing them by staying calm. You are showing them, for maybe the first time in their life, what it feels like to be near someone who isn't a fire. That was the actual prize the entire time. They were just the ones who got to decide whether they wanted to stand next to it.